So, attached versus independent specialists. Again, um, there are different ways that you can recognize this archaeologically. Uh, Attached specialists will either be located near where the elites or the leaders are. They might be the members of the nobility themselves. There will be evidence that they're being controlled. Maybe there'd be a seal or some other kind of document that shows that elites are trying to control their production, and they tend to focus on prestige goods. Independent specialists, you will tend to find them working on everyday items. They won't be necessarily located right where the nobility is. They might be near markets or in workshops in regular neighborhoods. So these are some of the ways that you can identify independent versus attached specialists. And what you saw in the film is that the Maya, there were some independent specialists, were making utilitarian goods. There were attached specialists making prestige goods for the elites, but it was different from Teotihuacan, where 25% of the population were craft specialists. So that was an extreme case of complexity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want to give you another example of some of the work that I did when I was working in the Middle East, looking at that Uruk expansion that we talked about before. And I wanted to see if the Uruk expansion had any impact on those local people who were living at the site. But I had a challenge, because working at the site, what they were probably trading is the Mesopotamians were probably trading textiles for things like metal and stone that they didn't have. Not surprisingly, the trade goods are not in the colony because they were shipped back to Mesopotamia. So you don't have a lot of the finished products. So how can we study trade if we don't have the trade goods? Well, we could study the possible packaging material of the trade goods. This petroleum tar called bitumen was used for a wide variety of things in the ancient Middle East. You could see waterproofing reed mats. You could see the impressions of reed mats, waterproofing vessels, glue for art objects, decoration, and glue for sickle blades to make on a sickle handle to make a sickle. So I wanted to look at the time period before Mesopotamians were there and the time period when Mesopotamians were there. So one of the first things I did was to look at how these petroleum tar artifacts were distributed at the site during the different periods. Right. So what I saw is that before Mesopotamians arrived to trade at this local site, there weren't that many high concentrations of that artifact, and where they did exist, it was pretty evenly distributed. When Mesopotamians arrived, there was a really high level, and it was only found in one area. It was concentrated. So that told me that there were changes that were going on. There was a lot of this stuff coming in, and it was all localized in one area. Then what I tried to do is to look at that petroleum artifact in terms of if it was a finished product, like packaging or transport, or if it was production debris, right? That is, they were melting it down and there were spills that fell on the ground. So production is different from the finished product. And what I saw is that before Mesopotamians arrived, there was a lot more, you can see, finished product. When Mesopotamians arrived there, though, there was a lot of an emphasis on production. And so what I think was going on is that the economy of the local population was shifting from an import economy to an export economy. If you have a lot of the finished product but less of the production debris, that's kind of an indication that they're importing finished products, but they're not producing them. Here, they're producing them, but there isn't a lot of the finished product, which means that they're probably exporting the finished product outside the site. Okay, So Teotihuacan is a really amazing site. You saw a little bit about it in the film. It had a population of upwards of 100,000 to 200,000 people. It's the most visited archaeological site in Mexico. It had a wide influence over Mesoamerica. And as you saw with the discussion on craft specialization, there was increasing craft specialization over time where with the figurines, for example, they showed you that it moved from kind of handmade figurines in small numbers of people, like in a household, to large workshops where they're using molds to really churn those figurines out. So there was more and more specialization in Teotihuacan over time. Okay, well, this is our discussion on ancient economy. Our next topic is going to be archaeometry, which is using science in order to answer archaeological questions. So using things like chemistry, physics, stable isotopes, things like that, geology, geochemistry, in order to answer archaeological questions. So that will be our next topic, and I have an interesting film about a Viking sword to go along with that. And then we'll start getting into human bones and human osteology.